A Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Gary is a San Diego financial solutions attorney, protecting people like you. The Word on Wealth team of financial experts is here to answer your questions and help preserve your family's financial future. Now,
Monday Live.
No, it's not Monday. It's Wednesday, man. Wednesday live here on the Word on Wealth. This is a good day.
See what happens when you take a day off?
You took a day off and you lost time. You went.
I did.
Happy Valentine's Day late.
Thank you, sir.
Well, Wednesday is another day here on the Word on Wealth where we become smarter, like every day. So every day we do this, we become smarter and smarter and smarter. So I have the smartest listeners out there. And today we talk about something that is near and dear to our hearts in San Diego specifically. And as we live in San Diego and as we house ourselves in San Diego, entertain ourselves in San Diego, one of the biggest investments we will ever make, one of the biggest time commitments we ever have, and one of the biggest senses of joy that we'll have living in Southern California is our house. Okay, it's a big deal. So I have a real estate expert, Ken Pecus. He's the founder of the Pecus Group at eXp Realty. He spends a lot of his time on Coronado and everywhere else in San Diego and in Priego County and all over the place. Ken can sell property anywhere. I personally endorse him. He is honest. He has integrity. He is a great guy. And he is a guest on our show today. Ken, welcome to the show.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Hey, it's always good. Now, I want to make sure that our listeners know this because they have their pens ready to get in hold of you. The one easy way is the cell phone. That would be to text you at 619-977-8419. And the other way would be to email you at ken@kenpecus.com. And Pecus is Pecus. So ken@kenpecus.com. Does that sound good?
I need to take you everywhere I go. Can you just say that to everybody?
Absolutely.
As I walk, go to the grocery store, this is good. But that's all correct.
Just put it on your shirt like I do, put it on your hat, put it on your shirt. I know you already do anyway, Ken. So I appreciate you spending the time with us on this. I do get excited for Wednesdays. I go, okay, good. We get to ask Ken for an update of the market because the housing market, it just seems so tricky to me. And I still have people, Ken, that are saying, well, I'm not going to buy a house right now because house values are dropping so fast. And so I don't want to buy. I'm going to wait till they fall. And then people are saying, I'm not going to sell my house because house prices are falling and I'm going to wait till they come back up. But it's just, I don't know. There's all this funny stuff Southern California to me, it's been consistent in the last 60 years, but I guess it kind of goes all over the place. So talk to us about the housing market today. And I want you to talk about your experience with multiple offers. We're not like in this desperate market. What's going on with sales and our market in general today?
Okay, so today it's sort of like Groundhog Day going back to 2021 and 2022, if you were just paying attention. However, if you've been around a long time, like you have, you'd recognize that this is just a typical beginning of the spring housing season cycle. Mm-hmm. So today, we're back to multiple offers. The inventory is very low, but I think we've talked about that before. And I think you hear that throughout, the media, that the inventory is very low. But, with the magic of the new year, everybody goes through holidays, they go through New Year's Eve, they make new resolutions. And then all of a sudden, I can tell you that a huge number of people with their New Year's resolutions is about finding a new home, about changing their homes, about selling their homes, about retiring. And there is always an influx of new activity that always happens the first half of the year. And that's the same that's happening right now.
So we're talking to Ken Pecus. And Ken, I want to ask you another question about that. Inventory low sounds like one of those things like, oh my gosh, inventory is low. But what is the benefit of just, if you think you're thinking about buying, you're thinking about updating or upgrading, maybe you're going to size up or size down and you need some money. Do we really sit or do we talk to our favorite mortgage guy and figure out what we qualify for and go for it?
The last thing you do is sit. When you started out this segment and you were talking about people saying that I'm going to wait till the market comes back or wait till it drops lower. Oh my gosh, that was like what I've heard from different people throughout these last maybe 3, 4, 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
However, I've also heard that throughout these last 5, 7, 12, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
People have been waiting for the market to drop ever since 2008. It went
Good luck
down
with that. It's like it's San Diego, guys.
Yeah.
It's like I was saying before,
was,
that, you know, it's like, yeah, housing prices are going to drop. Well, not so much, because it's what is it? Usually the Torrey Pines Classic is in the beginning of the year. They're on Torrey Pines, on the ocean, on the green grass, in the sun, golfing, you know, having the Torrey Pines Classic, and the people back in New York and Chicago and you know, they're all watching it huddled in their house because it's below zero, and it's just like they can't walk outside if they even wanted to, and they're watching the Torrey Pines Classic. Tell me that Southern California is not always going to be a desirable place to live.
Well, you just said that, but to be fair, San Diego has taken, just like the rest of the country, has taken a few price drops.
Mm-hmm.
It's normal. It'll happen again. It's happened before. It'll happen again. I have no problem with it, with the price drops. In fact, I hate to say it, but real estate agents get even busier when the market is in trouble a little bit, because people are still selling their house. We just do it differently, whether it's where's the vehicle of short sales or foreclosures, whatever. But so we're busy as agents. So it's not in my best interest to discuss whether the going down or the market's going up. What's in my best interest to discuss is what is going on with this particular market.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of, I would say, bad headlines out there that, if you kind of dig a little deeper and you kind of explain it a little bit, maybe to your listeners, maybe they can make their own
2 minutes.
What's going on, which is kind of where I wanted to go with some of the explanation. But I think right now the market's very strong and will stay very stable for the time being.
And I appreciate that. I think, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we need to hear. What I want to do, so Ken's going to be here with us to the bottom of the hour. If you want to call and ask Ken your question, do that right now on the show. It's 888-344-1170, 888-344-1170. Call and you can ask Ken your question. My next question for Ken is going to be, and this is going to take us to the break and right after, is there are headlines on these big price drops. And I want to know what Ken's advice is, you know, how do we respond to that? Because that's what's going on. That's what we live in, but still people need to buy and sell homes. So I want you to talk about the headline, big price drops, and kind of how it gets confusing. So talk about the stuff that you had mentioned to me before the show. Okay, great.
So let's talk about headlines. Just for fun, I found 3 headlines from last year.
1 minute.
In Business Insider, this last December, they said, the biggest decline from their peak home value. They used that as a headline. CNN used home prices are finally falling. Reuters in December said house prices to fall 12% from peak to trough. So if I'm out there and I'm looking at and I'm hearing those headlines, I'm thinking my house is worth. If I own a house, I'm thinking my house is worth a lot less. Or if I'm a buyer that's going to go in and buy a house, I think, hey, prices are falling. I better not buy right now. They might fall some more. Let's wait till I know that they've bottomed out. Those are the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
Those headlines are based on what across the country. A lot of times they cite CoreLogic and their big 20 city index. They're citing median price.
Okay. Now, when we come back, we're going to go on this median price and because this information is not accurate, and Ken's going to help us sort that out right here on the Word of Wealth. We'll be right back.
You don't need to know everything. You just need to know where to find answers you can trust when you need them. Welcome to the Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush. We are here to help you build, protect, and transfer everything you've worked hard for with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary and the team at gqlaw.com, 855-500-TRUST. You're saving and investing for the future, and that's good. Have you ever stopped to think, where does my money actually go? This is Faith-Based Investing with Anthony Wright.
Most Christian families don't understand this one thing. The money that you're saving for retirement helps fund the abortion industry as well as other liberal anti-family causes. It's the sad, dirty little secret of American investing world. And here
It's Tom Levine. He has a question for the guest.
Okay.
screen and clean your investments for you. There's no cost, no obligation. Learn the truth about your own investment mix. Then the choice is yours. Remember, the word says when God's money is in the hands of the righteous, the people rejoice. Well, we also are fiduciary investment advisor representatives. That means that our firm makes a pledge to always act in your best interest. Go to BibleSafeInvesting.com. Download a free copy of my book, Faith-Based Investing, or call me at 931-RETIRED. And please don't forget, listen to Faith-Based Investing this weekend right here on Family Talk.
Gary, your team at GQ Law are experts at solving IRS and state tax problems. Talk about that.
When people have a tax problem, it tends to really stress them out. And one of the things we've been able to do is figure out how to resolve tax problems. You know, one thing we might be doing is setting up a payment plan or getting a collection delay, maybe getting a determination that the person shouldn't have to pay the taxes at all. We do offers and compromise. We do audit reconsiderations. And one of the things that's a really powerful tool that some people don't recognize is sometimes bankruptcy can be used to actually eliminate taxes when there's certain conditions of the code that are met. So we can do all kinds of things. After we analyze your situation, we can figure out what's available, discuss your options, and figure out which ones to implement, what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take. And we can get people out from under all kinds of tax problems so they can sleep again. That's our goal.
Request your free initial consultation. GQLaw.com, 855-500-TRUST, GQLaw.com.
Tell a friend about this broadcast outreach, The Word on Wealth, with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Call or click to request your free initial consultation or to talk with a member of the team. Call Gary at 855-500-TRUST, GQLaw.com.
You're live.
Hey, welcome to Word on Wealth. This is Gary Quackenbush and my friend and expert realtor, and that is Ken Pecus. To get a hold of Ken, write down this number, 619-977-8419, 619-977-8419. If you totally forget the number, I forgive you. You can just call my office and we will give you the number of Ken. He's a friend of mine. He has sold property for me. He's done a fantastic job. He's helped my family sell property, a lot of property over the years. And Ken's just a good guy. So I'm just super pleased to have him as a partner on our show. We have a caller on the line. It's Tom from San Diego. Tom, how you doing today? Welcome to the Word on Wealth.
Good. Wow. Thank you, Gary. Great show. Thank you, Ken.
And that just happens to be Tom Levine, my producer. And Tom was listening. See, Tom even likes our show. I'm flattered. So fire away with your question, Tom.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you really sparked a question for us. Our adult son is in the process of buying his first home, and it is in Lake Cuyamaca area, just south of Julian. And if you looked at the listings and everything, it was kind of curious that we look to the fine print. It said it was built in 1966 and rebuilt in 2005. So what came out of that was that it burned down in the cedar fire. And so my question is is there anything special that people should do if they're approaching a negotiation or a transaction involving a house that is rebuilt after one of the big fires we had?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. The answer is pay attention. That house has actually burned down once. And so you are in a fire zone, just to start out with. So the questions you want to find out from the property is, was that property fully burned down or partially burned down? That's really important to know, because during all those fires, there were partial burns and there was complete destruction that, the property then had to be rebuilt from foundation up. If it was a property that was partially burned, it's going to be very important to find out what exactly happened. Meaning, did the roof cave in? Did you just burn out through one side of the house? All those different things, because that might affect the structural integrity of the property, and it might depend on how you go about how you investigate the physical condition. If it was a complete burn down, and this is a completely new property, that actually, in my opinion, would be better, because it has to conform to all the government guidelines of current building codes. So that, in effect, would be kind of a wonderful thing if that's the property you're actually looking for. The next biggest thing you have to look for is, and if you're going to buy anywhere in that area, Lake Rimaka, Pine Valley, Julian, you really need to immediately start investigating insurance rates and policies, because there are a lot of insurance companies that stop writing in some of these areas. So it's very, very important to contact your insurance company and find out, because where I might pay $1,200 a year or $1,400 a year for my insurance here in the central part of San Diego, a property out there, especially that was in a former fire, you could be paying $7,000-8,000 a year, and you might not even be able to get insurance. So one of the most important things is to find out what are going to be the terms of the insurance when you're going in there.
Oh,
And
that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll talk to him.
That's great
I
advice,
was just
Ken
saying-
Pecus. We appreciate that. So, Tom, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much, you guys.
And congratulations on your son moving into San Diego County, buying a house. That's fantastic. Yeah, that's I totally understand what you're saying, Ken. My daughter's buying a house here in San Diego County, and that was kind of a shocker. It's like, what? You can't insure my home? Because we bought our home, my wife and I did, like 25 years ago, and everything's getting ready to close. We're towards the end of escrow, and then it was my first home. No, wait, my second home. And then we're buying this house, and then I can't remember, somebody in there said, oh, what about your insurance? I said, oh my gosh, we didn't even think about that. Called my agent, and he said, Gary, we can't insure you. I said, what? I'm buying this home. I'm a week from closing escrow. And they ended up shopping and got us a fantastic policy. But yeah, that's interesting. That's a shocker. It's one of those things where they don't look at it in the finance. If you qualify for a loan, they don't care that your insurance is going to be $6,000 or $8,000, but something good to look at. That's for sure. Well, thank you, Ken Pecus. You are, and I appreciate you, and appreciate you, Tom, for being on the show with us today. Keep listening. So Ken Pecus from the Ken Pecus Group, eXp Realty on Coronado. Ken's number is 619-977-8419. We were talking about headlines, as if headlines were not worthy of being read, but they're very exciting. They're very titillating. They're kind of like, oh, if I read the headlines, the sky's falling and I shouldn't buy a home ever, anywhere. But you were kind of clarifying that for us, because you have Business Insider saying house prices are falling, CNN, they're finally falling, and all these different things. But help us kind of sort through that stuff. How should we be responding or not responding to that kind of thing?
Okay. I know headlines are meant to, like you said, titillate people, get them excited, not excited, whatever, but they can really be destructive to somebody that is starting out trying to buy a place, and they're misguided. They're misguided into thinking they're going to be making a bad decision because things are falling, when that couldn't be farther from the truth. So it's important to get this information out. Mm-hmm. So as I was talking about median, so I think it's important for everybody to know what all these headlines are sourcing. They're sourcing what is the median price of a home in these different metro areas. In San Diego, last year, that median fell from a high of around $850,000 to where it was kind of sitting at the end of the year, the beginning of this year, which was 750,000. So if you hear on the news, house prices have fallen from 850 to 750,000, you know, that's obvious. That's going to be a panic button, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to sit very well, but they don't explain what a median is. So the median, as it relates to house sales, is the number of houses that have sold below that value and the number of houses that have sold above that value. So if there was 1,000 houses, the median would be where 500 houses have sold below and 500 houses have sold above. So in this particular case, the median of all of San Diego County, so it takes places like Lake Cuyamaca and like Julian and like whatever, it could be everywhere from Chula Vista to Rancho Santa Fe, and they established that this many houses in San Diego County have sold below 750,000 and this many have sold above. So when the market and different parts of the financial markets are really humming along and you have these super high-end sales, naturally, there's way more sales that happen higher and that median pulls up. Neither has anything to do with the intrinsic value of what somebody has just bought. If you were really to sit down and look at something and say, has the value of my property gone down, you would take a more tangible look at it and see, what is the price per square foot for this type of house that's selling in, say, Carlsbad or in the downtown building of Pacific Gate or something like that. You wouldn't be looking for the median. Yet that doesn't, but if you talk about things like that, that doesn't necessarily sell a newspaper or sell a TV show. They want to condense everything to make it easy. But by doing that, it really hurts the consumer.
That is interesting, Ken Pecus. And I appreciate you explaining that, because it does make sense, because you look at it like, oh, wait a minute, if the median house dropped from 850 to 750, oh no, my house is it's probably got to be worth $100,000 less than it was before. It's like, no, the median, I mean, we've all had statistic classes. You have the average, the median, and the mode, and they're all different ways of looking at things. And median, we've got that stuck on our head, that median somehow has some representative value, but it doesn't have anything really to do with any specifics. And that's why when you were selling that house for us, it was the same thing. Is no, Gary, we've got to look at price per square foot, compare it with actual comps, things that are looking there that are similar properties, not just size wise and whatever. And there's just so many different factors. So I would say in this situation, I would ask you, Ken Pecus, with knowing that a lot of these things are just because it's flashy news, do we simply, if we want to buy a house, we plow ahead and start looking? Or do we look at the newspaper and go, oh no, house prices are dropping, I'm not going to sell today, I'm not going to buy today, I'm going to wait for later? What do you recommend?
In this particular case, you absolutely move forward. If you're looking to buy a house for shelter, let's just start with basics. Shelter, you need a home. You're either going to rent, or you're going to stay at your parents' house on a couch, or you can buy a place. Buy the place if that is your capability. It's the best hedge against inflation, because once you buy a place, your rate, your payment, it's going to be fixed. Your property taxes is going to be reasonably fixed. It'll only go up by 1% a year. Your other costs are going to be fixed. If you rent, your rent is always going to go up with inflation. And if you've lived in San Diego as long as you and I have, Gary, I don't actually remember the cost of rent ever really going down, unless it was some minuscule amount, in an odd year. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, rents have always gone up no matter what happened with housing prices.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really, really true. I hadn't thought about that, Ken. We're talking to Ken Pecus, and as you can see, he knows what he's talking about. If you've got questions for Ken, 888-344-1170. Yeah, when you're talking about rents, it's really true. They just always climb, and it goes up. It's just kind of the way it is. As the housing market starts to, as it starts to drop or level off or do whatever, you don't see people going, oh, good, my rent just dropped 10%. It's like, no, it doesn't really matter. And the way I've always understood real property too is it's really a hedge against inflation. It's the stability that you have. And yes, the market goes up and down, but it's nothing like Bitcoin. But the market does move around. But on average, it always goes up. It's kind of like real estate, if you're flipping it, that's a whole different story. If you're trying to buy in, do all that kind of stuff really fast. But if it's going to be your home property, something over your head, it's a different story. If you're waiting and trying to save, then the amount of money that you're saving is losing value because of inflation. So why not put the money that you've saved so far into a house, because that's going to go up in value and has nothing to do with inflation. So I would just encourage all of you listeners, tell your kids, tell your grandkids, if it's time to, if you want to move on, talk to your mortgage guy about, getting qualified for this thing. I think start out, you call Ken or text him to have a conversation with him. What they do is they look at where you want to look, how much you want to pay, and then they start finding properties. And it's crazy what they can do. A company like Ken Pecus in the Pecus group is what they can do to find properties in your price range. It really, to me, it's not quite magic, but to me, I can't believe how much information these guys have. It's not like us looking on Zillow or any other website. These guys have the inside scoop. They see things that we don't, and they know the market. Ken Pecus, it's Ken at kenpecus.com, 619-977-8419. Ken Pecus, I really appreciate you being on the show today. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you get lots of calls because people need to buy homes in San Diego. Thanks, man.
Gary.
All right, everybody, we're going to be back in just a minute. We're going to take a real quick snack break here, and when we come back, we're going to be doing a review of how to put a house in your trust, because I think that's important, and we'll know that right after this on the Word on Wealth.
You've got questions. We've got answers. This is the Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush of GQ Law. Gary's here to give you peace of mind with expert estate planning, trust administration, inheritance, and probate. Call Gary to build, protect, and transfer your wealth. 855-500-TRUST. GQlaw.com. You're not alone. Ask for the legal help you need. Call Gary and the team at GQ Law, 855-500-TRUST, or go online and download Gary's free ebooks and videos. Read Gary's blogs. Call or click to request your free consultation or to talk with a member of the GQ team. That's GQlaw.com, 855-500.
You're live.
Welcome to the Word on Wealth. This is Gary Quackenbush. We just had an awesome conversation with Kenny Pecus of Pecus Group, EXP Realty. His email is kenpecus.com. So the easiest way we can, and it's not always that way with real estate agents. I was surprised to find that as Ken was working on a piece of property for me, was he went, it was this kind of funny story about Ken, but we ended up trying to get this property sold. It was a pretty big deal to me to get it sold because his housing market was kind of moving in different directions, and I was worried about getting this house sold, and found out that Ken was going on vacation. And my first reaction was like, really? We're in the middle of the sale. We're trying to close escrow. We're supposed to close within the next, 2 to 3 weeks, and you're going on vacation. How could you do this to me? And it was funny because I would never, it's not that I wouldn't care, but if I go on vacation, I'm not going to be in the office. It's like, well, I'm entitled to a vacation. I work really hard and I'm taking a vacation with my family. So I'm doing this to Ken, like, well, really, why are you leaving town? You're supposed to be protecting us. Well, he does this for a living. He does escrows all the time. And he said, well, Gary, you can still call me. So where are you going? He says, I'm going to Argentina. So I can't call you in Argentina. He says, what's wrong with the cell phone? So he literally told me, no, I don't have my team take my phone calls. I take them because I want to know what's going on with your property. So we ended up calling him a couple of times, and it was in Argentina because there were questions. And it was just, we're just saying, going, Ken, you're on vacation, just relax. He says, no, that is relaxing for me. I can't relax if I don't know what's going on with my deal. So that's the kind of guy he is. He's a good guy. He's been doing things for my family for a really long time, which has been super helpful. And I finally roped him into, we had the opportunity to get him on the air, and I just thought it was really great because he's really good at what he does. He's really good at answering questions. And if you need help, you want to buy a property, this is anywhere in Southern California, specifically, it's going to be San Diego County. But call Ken Pecus, 619-977-8419, 619-977-8419. Speaking about houses, the next thing I want to make sure we understand is putting a house in trust. And some of you, I think, are just listening and going, Gary, you sound like a broken record. Aren't you ever going to stop talking about putting houses in trust? We all know that we have to put our house in the trust. Well, if that were true, then I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. All right. If I did my trust 5 years ago and I put my house in the trust, I would be happy that I did it right because that's what I do for a living. What happens is I do trust reviews, and I'll do them for my listeners for free. And that's where you call my phone number, the 855-500-TRUST phone number, and you get an appointment with me. What Jana does, or Lorena, is they will check and make sure that your property is in your trust. Just like 2 weeks ago, I pulled up somebody's deed, and Lorena asked me, she said, is this right? What's right? You know what the deed is supposed to look like. She says, I know, but there's something wrong with this deed. I looked at the deed, and the main thing wrong with it was it said, well, there are two things. Okay, so I'll just do both at the same time. The property said, and I'll use fake names, John and Susan Brown, joint tenants with right of survivorship, transfer their property to the John and Susan Brown Family Trust. End of story. That was the deed. John and Susan Brown, joint tenants with right of survivorship, to the John and Susan Brown Family Trust. Now, there were two things wrong with that deed. One is more severe than the other. I'll take the second one first. The worst part about it is to transfer your house to the trust. It doesn't work. That's not the way you do it. It shouldn't be John and Susan Brown transfers the property to John, the John and Susan Brown Family Trust, because the family trust can't hold anything. It's not allowed to hold title. It doesn't own anything. It doesn't hold anything. It is a book of instructions. It is like this receptacle. It is a box that can control things through a person. Real property needs to be held not by the trust itself, but by the trustee of the trust. And that's really important, okay? And that's the second one of our problems. So it should say that John and Susan Brown transfer the property to John and Susan Brown, trustees of the John and Susan Brown Family Trust, or revocable trust, whatever it's going to be called, dated November 1st, 2001. Okay. So John and Susan Brown transfer the property to John and Susan Brown, trustees of the John and Susan Brown Trust, dated whatever, November 1st, 2001. Because what's happening is it's being transferred to the trustees. It went from John and Susan Brown individually to John and Susan Brown as trustees. Why is that important? Because now legally, when John or Susan die, I can record a notice that says, oh, one of them died. So now the record is it went to John and Susan Brown as co-trustees, and now it's just one surviving trustee. When the second trustee dies, I then can record that the second trustee died. So now that we have both of the original trustees have died and we've given a notice of that to the county records, who's the one in charge? Well, the people that died were John and Susan Brown. The trustee office did not. It just is now vacant. I look at the trust, and the trust says, if John and Susan Brown can't be the trustees of their trust, then it's going to be Albert Brown, because Albert Brown is named in their trust as the successor trustee, who now technically holds legal title. It's now the successor trustee, Tom Brown, and he's holding it for the trust to follow the trust's instructions. Okay, so you pull out your deed, you look at it, and you make sure that it goes to you, husband and wife, wife and husband, trustees of the family trust name. Insert here. Got that? All right. Now, the first problem. The property should, if that couple, if John and Susan Brown were married, the property should be held as community property with right of survivorship, not joint tenants with right of survivorship. The reason it's community property with right of survivorship is because when the first person passes away in a community property state, and it's listed as community property, therefore we know it's community property, we don't have to guess, the property has a step up in basis, the whole property. Okay. So if I bought the house for $200,000, and then when my wife or when I die, it's worth, $1 million, classic San Diego, right? It's worth $1 million. We only paid 200 for it. It's worth $1 million. That means there's an $800,000 gain. If she tried to sell it right after I died, she's going to have to pay capital gains tax. However, if it's community property with right of survivorship, when I die, the basis, the tax basis, not for property taxes, but for income tax, or capital gains tax based on a sale, that house gets a brand new basis, and it is equal to the fair market value of the property. So when I die, even though we paid $200,000 for the property, 20 years ago, it's now worth $1 million. If she sold it the day after I die, there's no capital gains tax. So that's important. That's why we do the community property with right of survivorship. So if your property is worth, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, it may or may not be worth it. But when I'm doing a trust for everybody, what I do is if I see that it's held, husband and wife as joint tenants, or, anything like that, if it doesn't say community property with right of survivorship, I do a double deed, which is I correct the first deed so that we transfer the house to, John and Susie Brown, husband, husband and wife, community property with right of survivorship. So I'm going to do that so that the title is proper. It needs to be right and done correctly before you put it into the trust.
Never mind.
So there's two different deeds. Okay. If you want me to help you with this to figure out whether it was done right, it's 855-500 trusts. So 855-500 trusts is the number that you would call so that I could set up a free consultation with you, and I could talk to you about, how do you want it put together? What do you want me to do? I just think it's not hard to do. It's just important. What if you don't do it? So that's what you're asking me. It's like, well, Gary, I love listening to your show. Thank you very much. But mom and dad passed away. I'm the successor trustee, and their house said, husband and wife, joint tenants with right of survivorship. Is that a problem? Well, we have to go back and look and see, when did mom die? When did dad die? What happened with the property? We're probably going to be okay, but we're going to have to make some assumptions, and we may have to, do some legal paperwork to establish that the property was community property.
Now, 1 minute.
So it's not like a given. It's one of these things where it's better if you get it done right, because remember, folks, when we're putting together an estate plan, it is for the beneficiaries. It doesn't really help you. It helps you get peace of mind. It helps you if you're incapacitated. It really benefits your beneficiaries and takes care of them so that they can receive your empire without a lot of hassle and court involvement and things like that. So you want to get it done right. So I'm a stickler about getting the deeds right. Community property, the right of survivorship, if you are married, and then we transfer to the trust by saying it belongs to the trustee of the trust. And if your property is ever refinanced, or there's something that's done to it, there's a lien put on it, you've got to check and make sure that probably pulled the house out of the trust to do the refinancing or for the lien, and it wasn't put back in. So you've got to make sure you check that. You can go to the county records and check it too, or we can do it during your free trust review here. 855-500-TRUST, 855-500-TRUST. When we come back, I'm going to take your calls, 888-344-1170, right here on the Word on Wealth.
Sorry about that. What happened is same thing as last week. So I guess
EQ Law
live.
Hey, thank you so much for being a listener on the Word on Wealth. This is a lot of fun to be able to put together and shows together and share information with you. If this resonates with you, it's stuff that you need to know. It's, for some people, it's really interesting. For some of us, it's not interesting at all because it doesn't affect you. And when it does affect you, it's good to know. This is the kind of stuff, if you hear something we're talking about on the show and you want to ask me again or ask somebody on my team, like, what was Gary talking about? Or how does that work? Or does that apply to me? You can just call our number, the 855-500-TRUST number, and we can talk you through it and see if it's something that we can help you out with. Kind of help you figure it out and see whether you qualify, whether it makes sense. I mean, that's the thing about a radio show is I'm talking in generalities and it's not specific to your case. I'm not giving legal advice and saying, here's how to do it yourself. I mean, I don't want you to think I'm doing that. I'm getting pretty specific because I want you to know what to look for if it's not done properly, because then you can kind of get it fixed. And with estate plans, it's got to be done. It's got to be done right. It just has to be done right, or else it won't work like you anticipate that it would work. These shows, every one of these shows goes into a podcast. And it's not like I'm on a podcast right now. I'm on the radio and it's being recorded and it gets converted to a podcast. And all a podcast is, it's just that somebody talking like we're doing right now, but instead of it going out on the airwaves, it goes and sits on the internet on some type of a podcast channel. And my channel is called The Word on Wealth with Gary Quackenbush. And you can search Word on Wealth on any podcast platform. So you can go to your Apple podcast platform. You can go to Google podcast platform. You can go to Spotify. You can go directly to the website. You can go to kprz.com or kcbq.com. And either way, those refer you to the right one. I know KCBQ is actually theanswersandiego.com, but it both works. And I remember, I mean, as a kid, KCBQ was my rock and roll station out of Santee. And that was 45 or 50 years ago. But now it's The Answer San Diego, but you can still put in KCBQ and get it. And what you do is there's podcasts, and you can get my podcast, Andrea's podcast, and you look at the title and you just listen. You can re-listen to the show and have that information. You can share it with people. It makes it really easy so they can get that information. So instead of you explaining it, then I can be explaining it. You can also go to my website. There's a lot of resources there. Not an overwhelming number, because I try to make things straightforward, because you don't have time to do, a gajillion hours of research on my website. But there's a free book on my website called Living Trust Basics. The website is gqlaw.com. And it's a book cover. It's a white book that says Living Trust Basics. It's only 20 pages long, guys. It's 8.5 by 11. So if it were a book, it'd probably be more like 50 pages. So it's it's more of an outline format, because that's the way I learn things, is give me an outline so I can kind of get my head around it. That's the way it's set up. Talk about Living Trust Basics. Feel free to download that and share it with your friends. You just go on my website, gqlaw.com, put in your name and your email address, and it will be sent to you. And while you're there, there's a couple other free resources you can look at too. Like if you don't have a will or a trust, but you do have small children, then I'm going to scold you and say, really, you got to get something in place so that if you and your spouse pass away, your children become orphans, what happens to them? Well, if you've not designated who is going to be the guardian of your minor children, guess who decides? The state of California. The state of California puts them into foster care. And if you have a family member that wants to help take care of them and help you finish the duty that you could not, unfortunately, then they can petition the court. That's California probate court. They can petition the court and saying, I want to take care of this child. I want to be their guardian. That notice goes out to all the relatives, including both sets or 3 or 4 sets of grandparents and all the children, and it's basically be the siblings of the person that passed away. So uncles and aunts, grandmas and grandpas, they all get to know, and somebody does an application, and it takes about 3 months if you really hurry. Sometimes it takes a little bit shorter than that. Mostly it's 3 to 4 months, 5 months. And in the meantime, what? If you've never designated who's going to be the guardian, then the police can't even put them with a temporary. So what you do is, if you have a will, in the will, it designates the guardian. It says, if husband and wife are both deceased, then we want, Johnny or Susie to be the guardian of our minor children. And if you don't come home from your date, then the police, if they can find your will or a statement called a designation of guardian or a guardian nomination, if they can find that in the house because it's convenient, they will contact that person and say, hey, we got a problem. You are named as guardian of these minor children, and their parents have not come home, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So we suspect something's wrong. Would you mind coming over and helping out? So then the police can actually release the kids to go to the named guardian, not as an official thing, but rather than send them to the Polinsky Children's Center to kind of go through that process, they can go temporarily with the person that was named as guardian. Eventually, the guardian's going to have to do a petition and all that. But if there's a nomination, or if there's the guardians are named in the will, guess who wins? The person that's named in the will. So if you're going to, you go to petition, be guardian, and then it notifies the uncles and aunts and grandmas and grandpas and all that, and they get that all that information. They say, well, why is Susie doing this? Well, here's the will, and the will says Susie. It's very clear that's what they wanted. And the court, unless you've chosen like a psychopath, wacko, crazy, awful person, the court will most likely grant that. I mean, there's going to be an investigation to investigate you, or your candidate and the candidate's home and the candidate's spouse, and they're going to talk to the minor children, and all that's going to be presented to the court, and the guardianship can be awarded. But it's not going to happen in any sense of organization unless you have a will that designates who would be the guardian, or at a minimum, bare minimum, a nomination of guardian. So if you're traveling and this weekend, you're going on some big crazy trip and you're leaving your kids at home, congratulations, that'll be great for your marriage, but it's going to drive mom crazy because there's no guardian designation. Go onto my website. It's free. There's a tab called Free Stuff. It's the same tab as Pay Us, but you don't have to pay us. It's free. Go to my Free Stuff tab, and my Free Stuff tab has a nomination of guardian. It's just a piece of paper, download to your computer, print it out, fill it out, and put all the right information and sign it, and leave it on your countertop available for your person that's going to care for the cats or care for the kids, so that it's available to them, so that they know in the event of your untimely demise, we know who to contact to come and get the kids. Okay. Scary stuff. We don't like to talk about it, but we're big boys and girls, and it's the kind of stuff that we need to talk about. So you can go to my website. It's free, no obligation. I don't even track it because it's like, I'm not giving you legal advice. It's just a free form. Ask you, the tab is called Free Stuff. Then let's see if it works. It's called Free Stuff, and not free consultation. It's Free Stuff. And it takes you to the Free Stuff tab. And then you click on Nomination of Guardian. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, easy pleasy. It's all free. Let me know that you did it. Let me know that it worked. And that's the basics. That's not your will. That's not a trust. That's not good enough. It's just a stopgap measure because you want something. If you want to know how guardianship works, there's a little video called Guardianship in 2 Minutes. Welcome to my website, gqlaw.com, gqlaw.com. Go to my website to the free tab and get the free stuff that's on there. And that way you can, I'm just into protecting kids. Okay. It's a big deal. Big deal. All right. So if we're going to fund the house, we got talking about that. Investment accounts, bank accounts. How do you put a bank account into a trust? You can't. You got to go to the bank and open a new account. And if you go into the bank and say, I want to open a trust account, they're going to say, okay. And they whip out this piece of paper, the application and all that. And you go, wait a minute, this seems really weird. Did I say that right? I have a family trust that I just had drafted, and I would like to put my bank account in my family trust. And then the new accounts person will say, oh, that kind of trust. Okay, let me get it. And then they get the right paperwork. They want to see a copy of your trust. They want to see a trust certification, and you won't have one. If you did it through me, you'll have one, but you may not have a trust certification. So the bank's going to pull one out and have you fill out a trust certification that says, it's not that hard to do. It just takes, 30 minutes. So you open a bank account in the name of the trust, and the person that has access to it is the trustee of the trust. And then you move your money from your regular account to the account that's in your trust. That's how you put it in the trust. Investment accounts, very similar. It's just really hard to do on your own. So you'd be talking to your investment advisor, send them a message or call them and say, hello, financial advisor. I have a living trust and I want my investment accounts to be in my living trust. What do you need from me? And have them do the work of putting it in. This stuff works. It's important. Tomorrow we got Anthony Wright talking about Bible safe investing the right way. Anthony Wright, WRIGHT. And if you want more information from me, it's 855-500-TRUST, 855-500-TRUST. I really expect a call from you to get a review of your estate plan. Go to my website, gqlaw.com, and get information there. Also, remember my podcast is up on the podcast platforms. You can go back and re-listen to shows or pieces of shows. It's on there by segments, the first, second, third, and fourth segments. That'd be the easy way to do it. All right, you guys, I have appreciated being along with you today. I'm looking forward to the rest of the evening. Hope you guys have a great rest of your afternoon. Don't forget to listen to the Andrea K Show tonight. Go back to her podcast and listen to the Andrea K Show from last night, and you can hear yours truly. Yes, that was me on the Andrea K Show for 2 hours. It was a lot of fun, a little bit out of my element, but Andrea trusted me, and I think we did a great job. The last 30 minutes of that show, we talked about sugar. Sugar. We're going to try to get that guest back on, maybe on our Friday show. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your afternoon right here on the Word on Wealth. Goodbye, everybody.
Tell a friend about the Word on Wealth, featured
Sugar.
with financial solutions attorney Gary. President of the California Society of Tax Consultants. Reach
Again.
the Word on Wealth team of financial experts is here to answer questions and help preserve your family's financial future. The information you hear on the
Okay, this isn't it. This is the regular one.
This program discusses general financial and legal topics. Seek legal advice from a competent lawyer for your individual legal needs.
This is the one that we're always airing.
Use of Salem Media Group or its sponsors. The Word
It'll be right after this.
on Quackenbush is sponsored by the Word on Wealth Radio Network.
The airing of this program by this station is not an endorsement or recommendation by the station of the products or services discussed in the program. The station does not guarantee the results of any investments made by